testers versus writers, Pentest Quality in Assurance Project, and we have on stage Gabriel Tănase from KPMG Romania.
Hello. Just to also be sure that it works. Okay, good. Not good. It works. Okay, good. So after a very technical presentation, we will switch to a more theoretical one. I will make a parallel between pen tests done as part of a cybersecurity or a cyber maturity process and some pen tests done many times just to check a regulatory requirement. So just a very short introduction. I'm in KPMG for almost 15 years, and quite a long time ago I set up the Pentest team at the beginning with colleagues from other KPMG offices abroad, and starting 2007 setting a fully independent team in Romania. I have an information system audit background. Sorry. So I will try to put the pen test in the context of information system audit and see exactly how it was implemented in Romania, and make some references to a recent regulatory requirements. Yeah. So it was a new regulatory requirement. I don't want to name it. This can be applied to any regulatory requirement in Romania, and not only. But what is important is that although it started very well with the objective to bring security at the heart of the businesses from the markets, from the regulated markets, combining and analyzing the IT risk and operational risk, and how the IT risk impacted the operational risk within the entities, and with a different approach based on the importance of the entities on the market. It did not continue in the same manner. That requirement asked for periodic, based on the risk category of the entities, periodic information system audit and penetration testing. And it was required that the information system auditor verifies and describe how the pen test was performed by a third party. Yeah, it seems that my animation is not working, but anyway, we can continue like this. So it was a build an IT auditors register, and at this moment there are more than 20 auditors already in that register. What is very interesting is that some of them are registered as individuals. Interesting approach, how someone can contract a physical person, individual, because there's no mention like a PFA or some other type of entity, how they can contract in a different manner than employing maybe for a limited period of time. But some of those auditors came back and also registered as a company and as an individual. No requirements for the pen test. Yeah. Coming a little bit back to the standards, and I think that everyone can agree that real and the only standards which can be applied for auditing information systems and not processes or other type of objectives for the audits are the ISACA standards. And here there are two documents. One is the standard and the other one is the guidelines, which define the way how the auditor should involve a third party and rely on that third party work, and meaning that third party being an expert where the auditor has no appropriate knowledge or experience. The standard defines the statements for this. The guidelines go into more details. Here there are two slides I don't like usually, with a lot of wording, but those with the blue signs before are applicable for our case. And I just want to emphasize two things. The auditor should be the one who applies for an external party help and should decide and should select that party, be sure that that is independent, that is knowledgeable, and can really rely on the work done. And of course, decide on further way to report that involvement. Yeah, referring the work done by a third party or just including in the report. So this is also strengthened by the guidelines and provide information how to apply this type of involvement. Also the independence. There are two types of independence requirements: organizational independence and professional independence. And while organizational independence, it's about, in simple words, it's about the auditor or the professional company not being involved with any consulting work for that company, for the audited. The personal independence or professional independence comes to members of the audit team, going from standards and professional requirements to personal relationship, like not having relatives in the board of the audited entities. The requirements on our regulatory says that the auditor has to be capable to prove the independence, its independence. But in the same time, they require the auditor to review that third-party report. But what if the pen test is not done by a third party, because there was no pen test performed on the audited entity, and the auditor includes the pen test in the audit process? Has the capabilities to do that by the team members or by someone else, and perform this type of testing inside the audit. And of course, the results are the findings, vulnerabilities identified, without going into assistance to address those vulnerabilities. Is this a breach of independence? This is something that it's for someone it's very clear. For others, it's not so clear. They can say, yeah, it's a breach of independence because the responsibility is the entity, the audited entity, to do the pen test and not the auditor. But if there is no pen test and the pen test is done inside the audit, what do you think? Is there an independence breach? Okay. Coming to third-party pen test, we saw in our experience, in our projects, different approaches. There are companies which have a very mature cyber security testing process, and they are doing pen test for their own will to test the security status of their applications, their system, and not because someone is asking that. And there are entities which done for the first time a pen test. Everyone who did pen test can say that in most of the cases on a first time project, there is no report with low number of findings and low risk findings. Yes, and most of them being low risk findings. But still we see such reports. And why do you think is this situation? Lack of experience, or maybe just trying to check a box. I've done that. And if you, as an auditor, receive such a report, what you can do? You have to take it, because the law says you have to rely on the third party provided by the company. And in final step, you have to issue an assurance, an audit opinion that that system is somehow secure or not, or it complies with the regulation. But can you rely on such a report? What do you think? Yeah, but you need to recheck something in a project where you knew from the beginning that you will have a pen test report from someone else, and you do not plan such activities. Maybe the audit team which is allocated to that project doesn't have someone with the capabilities to perform some retesting on that. And of course, any type of such test have to be agreed and authorized and so on. So it's not so easy to do pen test retesting or check on the spot just because you receive a report which you realize that you can not rely on. Okay. What we did, we tried before this conference to make a very short survey and see what is the response, or what are the responses from different persons completing the survey. We have here some results. If the respondee said they didn't perform vulnerability assessment or pen test, it was closed. No other question were further showed to them. But about 80%, 88% said that they did such projects. And for vulnerability assessment, you can see that the respondents said that it was a process to do 1 to 3 times per year, and most of the projects were done with internal resources, which is actually the easiest way to do and kind of best practice. Anyone can buy a vulnerability scanner for applications or for network level, do that, have the reports from the scanners, and this is it. Unless it is a different, the IT department or security department or internal resources are very, very limited in that organization, there is no need to take someone to do this for you. What about pen test? So there were 3 main categories: doing pen test for once, 2 to 3 times, or even more. Most of the times, these projects were done with external consultants, and the reason why the pen test was done, it was for, of course, regulatory requirement, almost a half, yes, or other requirements like group requirements or internal procedures, or just because they want it voluntarily. What you can see here is that they did more than half with external consultants. They also did, in this case, internal staff. It was also considered like group entities, group colleagues. And with such a situation, as an auditor, if you receive such a pen test reports done by the group, do you take it in consideration or not? Are you capable to judge on the independence of that report or not? Because still it's a group resource, and you as an auditor have to be independent and as someone consider not even do the pen test. But you should somehow rely on something that is done by group staff. Is this an independent or not? Or independence breach? I don't know. It still have to be decided and see in the future how this will be treated, because at this moment I cannot provide you a very clear answer. If we take by the standards, you as an auditor being independent, you cannot rely on that. If we consider our regulation in Romania, you are even mandatory to rely on that if the client provides the report. Yes, it's good. The regulatory had the objective not to put someone to pay twice for a pen test, doing as their regular process of cybersecurity testing and also inside an audit. It's very true, and it was a very good approach and a very good idea not to burden the financial effort for those companies. But still, in the end, what an auditor should accept for his work and not should not necessarily be forced by this, even not in compliance with international standards. Other responses. What was the deliverables in addition to the report? And I can tell you, I took this very recent from the results, just trying to gather as much as possible the answers. So it was proof of concept, technical presentation, top management presentation, and other. And you can see that proof of concept, that was a multiple answer possibility. And proof of concept is the most used case. And others, actually, there is no other deliverable except of these two type of presentations and the demo, the proof of concept. And about the methodology, everyone selected a WASP, and also you can see that there is the ISCOM methodology for open source systems, SANS, and offensive security. Other, yeah, could be also other methodologies. Here there are also, there's a question, how do you evaluate a pen test report? And I don't know if you can read, yeah, but it's like based on the number of vulnerabilities identified, the vulnerabilities exploited, the high risk vulnerability exploited, the complexity of the vulnerabilities exploited. So not necessarily only high risk, but how it was, how easy it was to exploit those, based on the recommendation to solve the vulnerabilities, methodology, and risk metrics. So as expected, number of vulnerability exploited and the complexity are the most were selected by the most respondents. So no surprise here. What is your conclusion after a report with low number of findings and low risk? If the system is secure, the pen tester did a poor job. So you can see there were a few which selected that the pen tester did a poor job. Yes, it is possible. It's not necessarily something that we conclude only based on this, but still there were some which responded like this, so probably they had more information on their cases. Do you believe that a third party can evaluate how a pen test was performed only based on the report? And almost half responded that yes. Few responded no. Only if the report is huge, no one. Only if the vulnerabilities presented are exploited and not only identified, like in a vulnerability case, a vulnerability assessment case, and if the report is well written. The interesting response. I was expected almost no one to respond to that. Well written. What does it mean? Maybe even for these regulatory requirements, someone will hire people who know to write reports to make references to methodologies, like a WASP. I did in compliance with a WASP. Me as an auditor or anyone else as an auditor, pen tester, can say, oh, it's not good because I don't trust a WASP or something. I don't think so. It's a worldwide recognized methodology. I was quite surprised by this type of report. Well written. Maybe we'll, in the future, writers will be hired. And if you can provide the assurance based on such a report, only on the Pentest report. More than half says yes. As an auditor, I can say it depends. But in many cases, no. But still, it's something that maybe in the future have to be clarified and see how we can continue with this, because everything started with very good ideas and very good approach, trying to segment the entities, not to burden the little ones, and based on the risk category, but ended up in something that can be not a technical approach, but still just having a writing team to write good reports. Doesn't matter what is in those, and you can just take some type of vulnerability described there, and it's well written. So probably I can easily say no than yes to rely on such a report. As a conclusion, or maybe start discussing. Oh, this is working now, the animation. Independence. Is the pentest conflicted with the audit service? What if the pentest is part of the audit? Usually it's not conflicted. Unless, maybe with the new audit reform, unless there are special type of entities listed, it doesn't matter, and it's no point to go into details now in terms of independence and this type of requirements. But usually, pentest can be associated to a very technical audit. Reliance. Can an auditor place reliance on a first-time report? Low number of findings, low risk. Can assess the quality of the work done based on such a report? I don't know. Again, just to be positive, I can say it depends. But I'm more tentative to be drastic on response side and say no. It may be the cases when you know that team who did that project, and only because there is such a, let's say, lucky situation, you can rely on a report knowing that those guys are doing a good job. Yeah, based on previous projects and so on. It may be the case. But if it's not such a case, can you? I think no. You cannot assess the quality of the work only based on the report. And usually on a pen test, even the documentation on the back of the report, yeah, those which is done for the, let's say, for the project file by the team, it's quite limited. It's just maybe a list of tests performed, what worked, what didn't work, and this is it, because everything is in the pen test report. Can an auditor place reliance on a pen test report received from someone, a third party, even done by the internal group, internal resources from the group? Again, I can say it depends, but I'm more tempted to say no. And it's not because I'm a negative person, it's because if we take the standards and the principle which were presented, it's the auditor responsibility to select the expert, to involve where it does not have experience, knowledge, and cannot do the work, and to be sure that those are independent. So it's his responsibility. How can the auditor conclude on such case? He can say yes, it is, I have this report, based on that it's okay. But finally it's his responsibility. And maybe he is forced to do something like this based on something that is not written well in terms of regulatory requirement. And the final point is that the driver for Pentest in this moment, as a large market, it's regulatory. I know, and many of the guys doing Pentest knows companies which have a process in place and are doing Pentest for quite a number of years, testing every change, every new application. Of course, we are talking about important companies and not every startup, because in such cases may not be financial sustainable. But we know a lot of cases when big companies are doing that as a cyber maturity process. But still, those which are still quite big companies are doing just to check a mark. And I know that also there were incidents, not necessarily going to public in Romania, but because of these checks. So I think that we have few moments, and I did the presentation short, hoping that we can even try to start a discussion on these matters at this point. Thanks. So questions or things to discuss?
Hi. How do you see the situation of an outsourcing company with an independent team of pen testers? How do you see this working in a company that always has to be on time with releases for the client, or being at the client's always trying to fulfill the client needs, that sometimes doesn't understand security at all or doesn't even care about?
Okay, so for this type of outsourcing companies, there are two situations. First of all, usually the companies or the clients does not request like a pen test report. It's more like a different type of report. It's called ISAE 3402. That report is a specific report for auditors, and it contains description of controls with audit procedures done and everything, presented in a manner where you do not disclose as a auditor any confidential information. And one of those control can be, yes, pen test is performed regularly. So this is usually the type of report clients are requesting. Sometimes there are situations for special type of clients when they do request pen test reports. And based on the example you mentioned, is that with a good planning you can achieve that. And I do have an example, even not one, even more, from our experience, where we managed to respond on a very short notice to such request and perform the testing in time. Yeah, and there are a lot of ways how to let's say how to make the arrangements to be able to respond for the supplier, pen test, or not only pen test, to respond on a very short notice.